morning, guys, and welcome to the cemetery. I thought we would continue our Sabbath Saturday walk in the cemetery this morning. We're supposed to get a good bit of snow, and it's been a rough week. We hung a lot of drywall, so just want to relax and enjoy the cemetery this morning. So come along with me. We'll continue to talk about the Transcendentalists, and I'll show you just how beautiful this cemetery is. There's a bunch of these old crypts littered throughout the cemetery here. They're really cool. Old copper doors with some marble tombs inside. I doubt you guys can see the tombs through the glass, but really cool. There's really something spectacular about walking in unbroken snow, isn't there? Isn't there? So check it out, they were so hot they had to add an extra T to their name. Hot, hot, hot. Can't imagine where they came from. How's that for a last name? When I still fancied myself the next great American writer, I often came to the graveyard for inspiration for names. Orange. They say nothing rhymes with orange. So how you guys doing? Well, I hope. Snow day today, no work. Just enjoying a little walk. Continuing the Sabbath walks, as it were. We'll talk a little bit more about the Transcendentalists today, but I thought I'd just come up here to the cemetery. Been coming here and then following the creek down, Pigeon Creek. If you see that little creek in the background of a lot of my videos, that little creek on my place runs down into Pigeon Creek. We'll go down there a little later and have some breakfast. Right now, let's just enjoy the snow. Hear the geese? So on second thought, this might be a good place to sit down and have a little breakfast on a steep hillside here, secluded from everything else, right underneath some high tension power lines. Nobody's gonna be coming down here today. Brought the little Pocket Rocket 2 with me again today. Used to use this a lot back in my through hiking days, which have been long over since I got married. But these little guys are lifesavers. If you got to hike in and you're not sure about fuel, you have to bring these with you, but not that big of a deal. So let me finish this off, and then we'll continue our talk about the Transcendentalists. The Transcendentalists were just a small group of elites living in Boston, Massachusetts. Most of them had attended Harvard University at some point, and they were more often mocked than understood in their time. Of course, most notably among them is Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau, though Thoreau never really considered himself a Transcendentalist. There were others, though. Bronson, who later became a Catholic, converted to a Catholic priest, but Theodore Parker, Louisa May Alcott, one of the poets, Margaret Fuller was another one of the ladies. They were ahead of their time on things like feminism and slavery. and on, unwarranted taxes that were going to fight wars with the Mexicans. So most people know that Thoreau spent 2 years in the woods, but did you know he spent 2 days in jail for not paying his taxes in protest against slavery? Actually. But they also had very interesting ideas about nature and spirituality, and those are the ideas that I'm most interested in talking about for this channel. So let's dig into it a little more. So as I walk past this now defunct Catholic church, it seems appropriate that if we want to understand the Transcendentalists, we need to at least go back to the Enlightenment to understand it. So the Enlightenment really starts somewhere in the late Middle Ages, but certainly by the 1600s, people are no longer accepting tradition or religion's word for things, and are starting to poke into nature themselves and see what they can understand via reason and experimentation. Here's the old Catholic Church. But pretty quickly, as the pendulum swings, as it does throughout human history, the Germans and the French specifically started to think in those lines, and people got tired of it. And I guess Kant is credited for it. Immanuel Kant sort of sums it all up in his Critique of Pure Reason, in which he basically demonstrates that if you're only going to use reason to try to solve things, it's only going to get you so far. There's problems with it. That's an grossly oversimplification, but suffice it to say for our conversation that people started to wonder if reason really was the correct way to know things. Enter the Transcendentalists and the Romanticists. The Romanticists started to wonder if feeling and intuition weren't as legitimate claims to knowledge as reason. And the Transcendentalists come out of that school of thought. There were some art movements at the time, the Hudson Bay movement, which was a kind of classical art group that were looking to nature for inspiration, which is kind of strange because the Puritans were afraid of the woods. The woods was where the devil lived, but as the town got a little bit more of a nuisance and encroached on the woods, you got guys like Thoreau going back into the woods, calling them God's first temple. Well, hello there, and welcome back to the classroom. Professor Kevin is in, and he left Woodsy Kevin out in the woods. No, guys, I'm just joking, but I do appreciate the few of you who are into this. I realize not many of you are, but if you want to know me a little better, these guys and girls were hugely influential and are to my worldview. So please and thank you for bearing with me. So one of the most important ways that the German idealists and German scholarship influenced these guys was by translating major religious texts that they otherwise wouldn't have had access to. The most important of which, I think, is the Upanishads. The Upanishads is a collection of ancient Hindu texts whose major message really is that Atman is Brahman. Atman being the little self that dwells within, Brahman being the divine creator, thing, force that all of this is. And you see this kind of thinking run throughout Emerson's thoughts, specifically via correspondence. Let's talk about correspondence. So correspondence, simply put, is that the microcosm is a reflection of the macrocosm, and vice versa. That things you see on a small scale in nature will be replicated on a large scale in the universe. And in more spiritual terms, the sort of divine self that is within, as it were, is related to, is in fact the thing that we call God. So this all gets a little convoluted and a little too heady for this conversation in Emerson, and isn't really where my interests lie anymore anyway. But the main thing and the main takeaway that I think is important in the Transcendentalists and Emerson and Thoreau, more specifically, who didn't take any of this spiritual nonsense seriously, is individualism and self-reliance. Let's talk about that. So the Transcendentalists believed that social change came about by non-conformity, meaning being your own person, marching to the beat of a different drummer, as Thoreau put it. So this is why Thoreau went to the woods, to live deliberately, as he puts it, and to suck the marrow out of life, to not be influenced by other people's ideas. In fact, Emerson says, "Whoso shall be a man must be a nonconformist." Emerson wasn't afraid to change his mind when he learned something new, and I like that. He writes, "Speak what you think now in hard words, and tomorrow speak what tomorrow thinks in hard words again, though it contradict everything you said today. To be great is to be misunderstood." All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up lest I get even more long-winded than I already have and bore you even more. But the main takeaway that I think is important from the Transcendentalist is this notion of individualism and self-reliance. One of my biggest pet peeves in life is when people repeat things ad nauseum without even ever having thought about them or putting it to the test themselves. And then it just becomes this chain of conventional wisdom that we keep repeating and assume is true without ever really knowing. These guys wanted to know things for themselves, and I admire that. I encourage you guys to go read the Transcendentalists, specifically Emerson and Thoreau. If you haven't read Walden, at least read the first 2 chapters. I think you will be impressed, and I'm going to save Thoreau for a different video altogether because he is the one that I most related to in my late teens, early 20s. So sincerely, guys, thank you. Thanks to all the new subscribers. I realize this isn't the usual content. I got a bit of tennis elbow, so chopping's out for now, but I'll be back in the woods soon enough. See you guys on the next one.